You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to episode number 95 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. After a few weeks off, I'm happy to be back with some new episodes, and this week I'll be sharing a conversation that I had with my friend Cyrus. He and I met shortly after we started the noon meeting on Zoom back in 2020, and I can remember back in the summer of 2020 after one of the meetings trying to explain what it was like during the wildfires in California and the orange and brown skies that we were having. And Cyrus lives up in Toronto, and it was just so bizarre trying to explain that. And it's kind of weird now that the Canadian wildfires over the past month, I've heard a lot of people on the East Coast explaining just how bizarre it was to have those orange and brown skies. So during my conversation with Cyrus, we talked about a lot of things, including toxic shame, which stemmed from his childhood and living with his stepmom after his parents died. And I was hoping to find a reading on the family of origin issues, but I couldn't quite find what I was looking for. But Cyrus also talked about his depression. And for that, I did find a reading in Answers in the Heart, and this is November 25th. And I'm going to skip the opening quote and going right into the main body of it. Many of us have struggled with depression during our lives. Many of us have also felt the shame when we were depressed, as if we were lazy or weren't trying hard enough. But that isn't true. The causes of depression are complex, and those of us who suffer from it owe it to ourselves to keep searching for relief. As recovering addicts, we long to put all our energy into our new lives. The hopelessness, self-blame, and apathy of depression can be paralyzing and even life-threatening. In recovery, we need to eliminate stress. Depression is a burden we don't have to carry. Whether our feelings are a result of external circumstances or our body's chemistry, we can take good care of ourselves. We can feel our anger and sadness. We can seek professional help if necessary. Recovery doesn't mean an end to suffering, but the program promises this too shall pass. There can be an end to the suffering of depression. We have good reason to hope we will feel joy again. In the meditation, in my higher power's compassion for my suffering, I find strength and consolation. And yeah, such a great reading. And I know it's so difficult to overcome depression. And hopefully with help in and outside the program, anyone suffering from depression can find a solution that works. I also wanted to read an article I found from an outside resource about childhood emotional trauma and abuse. And this comes from a recovery center in Tennessee called The Ranch, or recoveryranch.com. Again, this is not from SAA literature, but I thought it had some good information. And as always, I will leave links in the show notes. And so I wanted to read the opening paragraph and a little bit of the second paragraph. And the article is called People with Sex Addiction Often Suffered Early Trauma. The cycles of behavior exhibited by people with sex addiction are often connected to traumatic childhood experiences, particularly attachment-related trauma that continues to impair their ability to form healthy interpersonal relationships. Attachment-related trauma can include physical, sexual, or emotional abuse by a parent or caregiver. It can also include neglect, which often leaves children feeling unworthy of affection, attention, and love. This kind of trauma can even include parental enmeshment, which is when parents derive all their happiness and self-worth from their children and their children's achievements. While neglect and enmeshment are in many ways polar opposite parenting styles, They can both lead to unhealthy attachment styles that may contribute to sex addiction. And skipping to the last part of the section called Childhood Emotional Sexual Trauma Common in Sex Addiction. People with a history of trauma can manifest a variety of different responses that are rooted in their traumatic experiences. This can include a deep-rooted sense of unworthiness, efforts to block or numb residual feelings, finding pleasure in extreme risk-taking, compulsive deprivation, and a recreation of the trauma experience. Many of these responses can manifest in the form of the compulsive sexual behaviors that are seen with sex addiction. So I hope that gives a little background on emotional abuse that comes up in our conversation. So Cyrus is originally from Bangladesh, and he talked a lot about that country's history and culture and his family's place in all of that. Additionally, he talked about teachings of Islam in relation to his sex addiction, and I will be playing some music from one of my favorite Muslim singers at the end of this episode. But now, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Cyrus. Here it is. I hope you enjoy it. Been a while since I've seen you on a meeting.
It has been a while. Yeah, I think my last meeting was perhaps 2-3 weeks ago. I'm in multiple fellowships.
What other fellowships do you mind saying? Or
sure, I don't mind. Yeah. I go to CODA, and so I'm kind of focused more on CODA, ACA right now.
Okay.
Al-Anon, those things. I go to AA. At times, due to isolation, I feel the craving comes up. I mean.
Well, cool. And yeah, I haven't properly introduced you. So we do have Cyrus here on the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And Jason.
Yeah. So yeah, good to see you. And yeah, we met during the Zoom era of the pandemic, and pretty much early on.
Yeah, I think the isolation affected everybody in different ways. I saw a few family marriages disintegrate due to isolation, and they had problems, and sort of isolation brought it out. When I came to the program, I think I was losing my mind, kind of where I am right now, but I'm, by the grace of God, on the mend again.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and was out of desperation.
Yeah.
You know, we have a saying. I'm from Southeast Asia, and I don't know if it's a saying or not, but maybe it's a saying that somebody put a lighter under you.
Yeah.
I hope it's podcast. The podcast has the appetite for this kind.
Yeah, we can say whatever we want on here.
Cool.
So.
Okay. Yeah.
I let F-bombs fly all the time. So yeah, don't be shy.
No.
Yeah. So before getting into your story and where you're from, I wanted to ask about your circles, your inner, middle, and outer circle, and then it's a great way to get to know you really quickly, and then we can move on from there.
Sure. Yeah. My inner circles are aren't too much, but they are quite destructive. By the grace of God, I wasn't there for too long. They are not acting out in public, in public transport, and not watching anything illegal online.
Gotcha.
Yeah, middle circle would be masturbation. I hardly watch porn, but YouTube videos or audios that are erotic.
Yeah.
And videos, YouTube or what have you, that have porn-ish element to it.
Yeah.
Outer circle, I'm working on them right now. So I got into acting, and I'm going back into acting classes in June. Cool. Acting and writing, these two are my outer circle. So far, I live very close to the lake where I am in Toronto. So walking by the lake, hopefully getting into rowing or I love kayaking. So getting into
Nice.
would be one of the major things for the projects for this year for sure.
Cool. Cool. And so, yeah, you said you were in Toronto.
Yeah, yeah. I live in downtown, thank God, and my story will tell and it's how improbable for to live
Hmm.
where I live. And in my early recovery, I would walk around these places and think that who lives here? Never in a million years thought I would live here. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So I live just by the lake in downtown Toronto. It is probably the nicest downtown and compared to Vancouver, it's nicer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been to Vancouver a few months back, but I think it's a nicer. I went to Alberta and a few other places, Edmonton, but
Hmm.
Edmonton, compared to those two cities, definitely Toronto downtown is much nicer, cleaner. It's you could say it's a cleaner, smaller New York City that you can get vibe of LA, especially around when Toronto
Hmm.
in the film festival takes place in September. You have all the major stars, directors come in. Steven
Cool.
Soderbergh
Oh,
came in,
nice.
yeah, and then I saw Jim Jarmusch. He did a lot of famous movies. Forgot the name right now, but yeah. So that's the city I live in right now. Yeah,
Cool. And you said you were from Asia
yeah, yeah.
originally.
Southeast
Yeah.
Asia.
Yeah, I'm interested to know about how you grew up
Sure. Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that. So,
Yeah. I'll say it, if it helps people
yeah.
to connect with me. I'm from Bangladesh.
Okay.
And it's one of the biggest in terms of population. Yeah, it is up there. I think it's eighth largest in terms of population, but per
Hmm.
square
Yeah. Yeah.
or something. Yeah, the density is very high. Probably we would have in one area of the country would have more population than the city of Toronto. It's not impossible.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 55 or 65,000 square kilometers.
Uh-huh.
And you have what about 20 million, 200 million.
Sheesh.
Yeah, I know. I was born on the south side of the country, called Chittagong, currently called Chattogram.
Hmm.
The name got changed some time ago. My parents had a lovely life. God bless them. They both passed away, and never saw them fight ever. My dad never raised his voice once to my mother,
Mm.
just for something, and that was it. I never saw them fight ever. I was very, very, very attached to my dad. My mom came from a very literate family. They weren't rich at all, but her father, my maternal grandfather, really focused on education, and merit was a huge thing for them
Hmm.
because they didn't come from too much means, and they were very spiritual. I mean, they're very pious.
Sorry,
No, no,
Muslim or
I'm Muslim. Yes, I'm
yeah,
Muslim. Yes, yes.
yeah.
Thank
And I
you.
think we had talked about that in fellowship once or something like that.
Perhaps, yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good pickup. Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I would have come to it one way or the other. I had,
yeah, yeah. I was going to
but
circle back around
yeah,
that
yeah,
when
yeah,
we get to step work and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so my mom was a doctor and a typical A-type personality. My dad was had business and he was traveling all the time. As I said, I was too attached to him. I would cry all the time whenever he would leave. My heart,
Mm.
like literally. But I should give you a background about my parents. They eloped, so there was no one who came to their wedding.
Hmm.
This would make sense later on. Why I'm saying this. My dad was married to my mom's older sister in the 70s, mid 70s.
Hmm.
They got married, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. And I think my parents, my mom and my dad met when the marriage was happening, etc. But there was no, at least I have not found any proof that there was any attachment or that feeling played a role in the breakup of the marriage.
Hmm.
They were fond of each other for sure. And the marriage did end with his first wife, my mom's older sister. They already had a child, my older half brother, and it was painful. My dad was in England. My dad came from a family of means in the 70s. The country had just come out of a war with Pakistan, but they had Mercedes and they were very
Hmm.
well. And my granddad was the postmaster general of the country, so And they've always been in government service.
Mm-hmm.
My great granddad was senator.
Wow.
So they had a lot of land. So they came from means, and they were very humble people, and they were very kind to people, very kind. Which is why when the war happened, there were incidents when one of my youngest uncle, who's a psychiatrist in the U.S., got lined up. And you get lined up by the military occupying forces, you are likely gone.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who's a collaborator who was working for the army for the other side pushed my uncle away, saying, "Go away." So they never came on and hurt my family because people really loved them. Until this day, even though the family household is in shambles because no one lives there almost. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm from that family, I'm a son of that family, a daughter of that family," they would respect you because
yeah.
So the marriage between my dad and his first wife, who became my stepmother, happened because they were just extraordinarily beautiful. Even now, God bless her. They're very exotic. They don't look like Russian. I can't really explain. I saw a Russian woman who looked like her once. Very striking, very exotic looking. So was my mother. They have this Italian European kind of tinge. My eldest maternal uncle looks like Al Pacino.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not bragging. He kind of looks like his brother or something. My older half brother, my dad's first son, he also looks like Al Pacino, kind of. So they have this kind of weird thing. But from that side, I'm just to give you a background of where these two families sort of came from. And I'm trying to sort of track down the psychological or psychospiritual dysfunctions. One of the things that, despite them being very kind and prosperous, etc., one of the things that was very prominent in my dad's side of the family was multiple marriages. So, and these are legends that I've heard. My great granddad would just marry somebody, bring that wife over, and keep her in a different house, just like that.
Yeah.
And I remember once going back when I was young to the village, and one of my dad's cousin, showing me how much land we had. It was as the eye could see, like. So they had power and wealth, and they were kind to people in general. But multiple marriage is something that sort of stuck, that culture, let's say, stuck.
Okay.
And dysfunction that I can sort of point my finger to. I couldn't point to any mental disease or mental disorder in that, at least from my dad's side, so far as I know. I'm 43 right now, so I have a decent idea what happened on that. On my mom's side, I think my maternal grandmother, who, God bless her, she loved me a lot. Her father was a businessman in Burma, Myanmar, in the 1940s, 30s. And he was a brilliant man who wrote a lot and was very eloquent. But there were riots happening in the 40s, and he got caught in the riot and he was murdered. Wow. Maybe it was in the 30s, I think. Yeah, maybe in the 30s, because I think they got married in the 40s. And so my grandmother, my mom's mother, had to move from their house to live with her mother's family. Right. I mean, I don't know what it does to a child to suddenly hear that their father is murdered.
Yeah.
I think that never left her. I could be wrong. Maybe it did. I don't know. So fast forward to the 70s when as I said, my stepmom was very beautiful, striking, beautiful. She was 19, I think 18 or 19. And my dad's oldest sister was a very prominent doctor in the city here. At that time, there were very few gynecologists, and she was the one, just like Florence Nightingale, who took care of the Turkish and the Russian soldiers.
Yeah,
she took care of Pakistani forces, the wives of the Pakistani forces, and also took care of the people of the country. So there was that kind of interaction that played out. So she was very popular. She went somewhere, I don't know whose house. It was a mutual acquaintance. A small city, everybody I think knew everybody, especially if you're in the middle class. And she saw my dad's first wife, who became my stepmother later on. And she's like, "Who is this girl? I'm looking for a bride for my brother, who just my dad just became, I think he was a country manager for multinational at that time. And it was in the 70s, and he had a really good job by the grace of God. It didn't last. That's the story would go. And they got married, and I think the whole street that they were married, it's a long street. I'll say about 500, 600 meters before you have to go to take a turn to somewhere else. The whole street was sort of fastened with lights, everything. These kind of things sort of, to me, harkens good or bad, But in this story, it didn't bode well. The marriage didn't last more than 2 years, I think. And obviously, after that, my dad and my mom were eloped. And I was born. I'm not sure who came to see me when I was born from my mom's side. I didn't know much of that family. My mom told me about her older brother, and she did tell me about my dad's son, but he would say that you have a brother. His name is so-and-so. I said, okay. My mom, God bless her, she was a doctor. She did very well. They were both kindred spirit. And she realized, I think, now that I look back, staying in the house that she was staying in wouldn't serve her purpose, which is why obviously she left. I think in all cases, psychological and spiritually for sure. We moved to the northeast side of the country, Sylhet, Silhet, Sylhet. And my mom, that was my mom's last position. She was a teacher at a medical college that was new, I think, at that time. I could be wrong. And she was very popular. And then the government deputation works in different ways, because she was teacher in the government university. She had to come to Chattogram, the south side where I was born, for an exam. And I think it's destiny, she came, she was a teacher, invigilator, or whatever you call it, in the exam. And one night after she was done with her work at the medical college, she went to see her parents. She met with everybody, I think, except for her father. Her father, I think, went, we call in Bangla Nana. Nan. You can say Nan in English. Right?
Yeah.
So, but I guess Nan is attributed to a female.
Usually. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. In our case, Nana is the male counterpart, maternal grandfather, and Nani is the.
Yeah.
Nana is the father, and Nani is the mother. Okay, so her father wasn't there; he was away, I think. But she met with everyone else, all her sisters. My aunt had a car. She was about to send the car, but mom is like, "No, you don't have to send the car. Well, I'll just go with the car." But she sent the car anyway. So my mom took a taxi. But taxis are like rickshaw that people say with a motor, and it makes a lot of noise. Like there's a handle you have to pull. You have to pull a few times to start the engine. Yeah, it's still there. I mean, you can probably see it in some museum or something.
Yeah.
So she was coming back to see me, and she had pastries for me that someone gave me. So she passed away, I think, 500 meters from where I was standing. I could hear the chaos in the house. So my aunt, my dad's older sister, they had a pond. So they had a house, she had her hospital, you could say. So I was standing by the pond expecting my mother, when I think all the chaos broke out, that his mother had an accident. He was 33, and she was pregnant with my sister. So I wanted to run and see her, but obviously I was young, and they said, "No, it's okay. You don't have to go." People are running around. Basically, what happened was her vehicle was hit by a bus, and like a steel rod or something went through the back of her head. So she was she was dying. When she was bleeding, people are different, in different situations. Someone went there and stole my mom's wedding ring.
Oh,
My dad forgave the guy.
wow.
I saw the guy, actually. Yeah,
Wow.
the police caught him and we went to the police station to see the guy. For a long time, I think that day I felt really guilty because my mom was very strict and my dad was kind of laid back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just that she was just so driven because she came from not much means and she was going really somewhere. And after her death, a lot of people said it was a loss for the country.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a riot the next day, and riots are not uncommon, and things hit people in back home.
Yeah.
That really hit a lot of people. They're breaking buses and all these things, and my dad was furious. Like, why are they doing this? Like, it's no point. All this, okay, someone did something. It was an accident, but the other people, they did nothing wrong. So my mom was dying. No one really took care of her because they were just probably people didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think then someone from my aunt's household took her to the hospital, but by that time she was 7 or 8 months pregnant. Sorry, 7 months I think pregnant. My sister. I never thought this would be so hard to talk about.
I know it can be emotional.
So they couldn't save my sister and obviously not my mom. I remember going with my dad to the hospital. There's not a scratch in her face and like she's sleeping. There was just a scratch here on her forehead where the thing came out. I was talking about guilt. That morning when my mom woke me up, I think it was around 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever. I had nothing to do, and I don't know why she woke me up. I called her something. In Bangla, we have a female version of bastard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You guys have, is there a female version of bastard?
There might be. I can't think of what the word might be. I've never really thought about that.
Yeah. I called her that.
Yeah.
And then at night when my dad told me that your mom's gone, she's not coming back, I cried only a bit because my dad was there.
Mm-hmm.
How
old were you at this time?
I was 2 months shy of, roughly about 2 months shy of being 8. And that's when my dad told me that, hey, son, I made a mistake once. I married someone and then I married your mother. Exactly. And there's a brother on that side.
Mm-hmm.
So next day I actually met my brother or half brother, however you want to call it.
Wow.
Yeah. It was very weird. So we went to the morgue or somewhere where my mom's body was kept, and my eyes fall on this teenager. We don't look the same. And something in my heart said, that's your brother, that's your brother, that's how I knew it was my brother. I think I saw my mom's older brother on that day for the first time. He never visited us. I think him and her mother never visited us in ever.
Yeah.
I think I could be wrong, but I don't think there are any pictures. I'm not going to ask him that question and bring this kind of past and affect him. I don't want to do that, but don't remember seeing him much or ever. But other people, my mom's dad or my nana or my grandfather would visit, and her brothers and sisters would visit us sometime. My grandfather was, I don't know how to say it. She was his dearest daughter, and it broke him.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Broke him. So in the meantime, my mom gets buried, etc. I have more freedom now.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mom was the one who
the strict
do your homework.
Yeah.
Do your 10 editions. When I come back, she would give me like 8 hours, and I won't even do the thing that get a whack. But they weren't violent people. I remember when I was growing up, I would see stuff in movies that people hit the table,
Yeah.
and I would do that, and my mom would just get so shocked, like, who taught you these things? Like, never said anything bad about anybody. That's something that they never did.
Mm-hmm.
You'd never say anything bad about him. No backbiting. Backbiting in my faith is,
Yeah.
even in your heart, if you do it, you have to say repentance, say something, astaghfirullah, God forgive, something like that, to repent. But obviously, you can't even hear it. If you hear it, you have to defend the person.
Oh, wow.
And then if that other person doesn't stop, you walk away, because you have to take a stand. It's human honor. Honor is something very important.
Mm-hmm.
That was very important for them. Yeah. So in the absence of my mother, my dad wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to, connect with his eldest son, my half brother,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it was nice. We were really connected, and my stepmom was living in a different city in Dhaka, and we were living in Chittagong, and they would come and visit us, and it was, when they would leave, it was terrible. I would cry on the station.
Yeah.
I grew up lonely, so having someone to just play with and
Yeah.
stuff with was a lot of fun. Then finally they got married, remarried. Things changed right after that. My stepmom, in the big book, they say that people who do things to us, they perhaps went through worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what she went through. My stepmom has a temper like the sun.
Wow.
So that's yeah. Some famous poet. I think Auden has a poem on Irons where the second line talks about perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Perfection was his thing. I'm butchering the great man's writing. And then to perfection, I think that sort of played into her. I think that insecurity, like what I feel right now, not capable of doing things. You mask it with your anger, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And you project. It's human thing. It's just human. One is not taught in a kind, gentle way about these things. Or if they're taught, but one is not going to absorb them for whatever reason. Maybe it's the teacher's fault or the student's fault. That's a different story. It affects people. I still remember a fight that they had over on the dining table. I was crying. My brother was trying to stop them. He was like, "No, I was 15, 14 or 15, trying to stop." I mean, this man, a teenager.
Yeah.
He just got his father after 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Now it's his job to mediate between two adults. It's still that scene's still in front of me, sitting on a dining table, breakfast time, I think. I'm crying. My stepmom had a habit of leaving the house and uses that very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
For bargaining. She'd go to a store and she'd go to a store and say, "Hey, I like this." And then she would create a tantrum, and then she would leave. And this is how the people would actually follow her and say, "No, come, madam, come in, we will reduce the price," etc. So people get into this kind of game, which is interesting just to watch.
Wow.
As an observer. I don't know what to make of it, but John Nash, the great science, the great mathematician, could have made something out of it. But it's an interesting game to watch. So she would leave the house and go to my grandparents' place, and my dad would stay out in a car, and me and my older brother had to go and cajole her, convince her to come back. That was the kind of drama that was playing on. It's a fact, scientifically proven, as far as I know. I think if I have a partner and she passes away, or let's say I pass away, the survival rate for the other partner goes down.
Yeah.
And I think for men, there's a 30% chance, unless there is something to sort of replace that emptiness. And I say that because my dad passed away within 2 years of that. Their marriage was, no one wanted it, no one attended. It was the most successful one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my mom, after she passed away, her students did a lot of things, and there were things named after her, even now, by the grace of God. So she's she's well known. Like even now, like when my family members would meet new people, new doctors, and say that, hey, do you know so and so? Like, yeah. We were classmates and stuff. She was a brilliant person, which is why I said, like, people say that, she was a loss for the country. That,
Wow.
yeah. God bless her. Yeah. As I said, I was very, very attached to my dad. And he was a person, he would read me stories. I'll sit in his lap. He would read me stories from, fairy tales, or he would talk about Karl Marx. I was like 7 or 8, 9.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah,
Wow.
He would watch movies. I watched the first Predator with Schwarzenegger. I watched it. Like, I was scared as out of my mind. Like, oh my God. I watched, I think RoboCop. Did I watch with him? Not sure. Maybe, yeah. He was into movies and culture. He's read Dostoevsky, had a copy of the Bible. I mean, he was a lettered.
Wow.
I mean, a man like him does not exist. I'm alive because of him, and I'll tell you why. It'll come in a
yeah
story. I'm alive because of my dad. A man like him does not exist. But I have not met anybody like him. So, one of my dad's uncle passed away, and in my tradition, say maybe Islamic, maybe cultural tradition, people do festivals to commemorate the dead. I respect. We believe that if you feed somebody in the name of the dead, the dead people, the soul gets the reward of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
The soul lives on. That's what. So we were going to a feast that was held in the honor of his uncle. And we were going there. It was 10th of February, 1990. February is very bad for me. And everybody calls me, are you okay? My mom died in February, 24th February, 1988. My dad, 11th February, 1990. But it was 10th of February. We were going, and there was some kind of strike going on, I think. So people had cut trees and blocked the road. So you had to call the police, someone clear the road, etc. So it took us a while to get there. That day, the fish that was served had a lot of fat in it. And he had ischemia, infection of the heart. I think that's what it's called. And my stepmom was saying, hey, don't eat so much. It's bad for you. He was like, if I die, I'll die eating. And he was just fine. When we came back, I was kind of half asleep. It was like around midnight when he came back to the city. Picked me up. I was in his lap. He's taking me up. My stepmom was like, get off. Your dad is tired. I held on to him. I think it was destiny, I think. That was the last time I was able to hold him. And that idea that stepmom was saying that get off him will resonate.
Oh.
The deconstructing of my dad's idea was still a project that is in play to a more or less degree. I think it's kind of lesser right now. It's more mute. But I'm sure she was also concerned about his health. He had to carry a 9-year-old up the stairs, put him to bed. So my dad died that night around 3 a.m. in the morning. I woke up. I saw my grandmother in the house. She had never been in the house. And I saw one of my aunt who disliked my dad, but my dad never said a single bad thing about her. And she would always give my dad notes that are dirty, that have holes in it. But he never said a single bad thing about him, ever. We would just smile like, oh, notes are. I mean, that honor, that's so much honor.
Wow.
And coming back to the story, sorry, I woke up, I see everybody. I don't see my father. My dad already had 2 strokes before, and I was always in my mind. And I run around, and then I go downstairs. There he is in a car, in a stretcher. I think in an ambulance. I don't know. Cotton in his nose. I remember this. I never told anybody. Not even to my therapist. My dad had business, and he was not very good at it. He had fantastic ideas. One of the ideas that he had that became very popular in India was supplying lunch to offices.
Yeah.
In the 80s, people didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Right? But he took in one of his somebody I don't know who that was. I'm sure But that idea didn't go very well. In the end, when my mom died, he was despondent. He was half the man, to be honest. He made friendship with someone that gave him bad advice. Till this day, their family apologized to him. Hey, man, I'm sorry about someone.
Oh, wow.
I mean, past is past. Nothing can be done. So the advice was buy a land in a remote area and make a resort. It's beautiful land. It's like a 40-acre land on a hill that you have to take a horse up the hill. And that was one of his last projects. So he passes away. Coming back to the funny incident, one of his business partner came in, and the guy was so shocked. He was like, "You son of a bitch!" But he was under his breath. Under his breath, Tie my dad is that you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. I could read his lips. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the thing that where I am right now. I think I'm half the man that I was when I was 10 years old, because that child, if not much deconstruction was done later on, would have been okay. All these mental problems would have been taken care of in a much more easier, softer way. It would work. So my dad passes away. All the finances are gone because my stepmom doesn't know what to do about all these businesses that he had. We survived because we were staying at that time at my dad's older sister's house. I think in the 80s, they were very wealthy, very, very wealthy. So businesses are gone. There's no earnings. You have these two kids. I'm talking about my stepmother.
Yeah.
You have your own issues. You detest the guy to an extent. Detest the guy. Yeah, she did, definitely. Because this guy left you and married your younger sister.
Married the sister, yeah. Yeah.
That, this is something you can test out. And I can assure you this is true. Envy doesn't die. If I envy you, if you die, I'll still envy you. And unless I cure my own envy.
Yeah. Work on yourself.
Yeah. And in my faith, envy is like fire that burns your good deeds.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. You're Buddhist or
no.
Okay.
Non-religious.
Non-religious. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how the Buddhists or Hindus would see that, but in my faith, that's how it's according to Christianism. So even though she wouldn't, and I look just like my mother, so the guy you had, my dad, God bless him, gave me access to all the classics, most of the classics. In comic book version, so I could read them. So in the beginning of in Moby Dick, which I love, haven't read the whole book or the book version by Melville. The beginning that I remember is Ishmael holding onto a log because the ship is sinking. Right? I think she was in that state. She was. Your dream is gone. You have your insecurities. You thought that this guy is not going to leave you because you have two kids with him, and he came back into your life. Now this guy is also. Like, your world is shaken. And then you see this young kid who looks exactly like
your
sister that did things.
Yeah. It's the living reminder.
I I feel man, I'm laughing now, but I wasn't laughing then, trust me.
Yeah.
It's a terror. So she was very kind to me in the beginning, and then one day she just slapped me. I was so surprised. Like, you slapped me? Like, really? I thought you loved me. And when my dad died, my dad would always tell me stories when I go to sleep. I would ask her for stories, and she only had one story she could tell. So I said, okay, no problem. And I was in grade 5 at that time. Between grade 5 and grade 8, my dad would always buy me books. She bought me no books for 3 years.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so I would just read my old books, and I never complained. One thing was a highlight of that life was that the constant barrage towards my parents. Constant. Like, your mom is a whore, your dad is this and this. That's like every day for like 15 years, every day. I was 10 that time, 10-ish, until I left the country when I was 25. And that created a lot of shame being an orphan. In in my religion, there's a last chapter has a section where it talks about taking care of the orphan and the widow. She was a widow herself.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I was not taking care of the orphan.
Mm-hmm.
It was brutal. The verbal assault was physical assault was, by the grace of God, I've forgotten all that. I would cry and they would say, you're acting. You're acting, you're not crying. And I would cry for death. I would cry for death. I would pray to God, God, just take me. I just can't deal with it. This is too much.
Yeah.
This is just too much, and she was a rageaholic. Attend once in a while rageaholic meetings. By the grace of God, my anger level is much lower. And because I'm in so many programs, I have to check in or make amends. So that's making amends is something, you want to stay out of.
Yeah.
I mean, repeated amends, of the same sin. It's just like saying with an alcoholic, almost, because, bro, like if things are delayed by a minute, eruption, like volcanic eruption. Things are off by a millimeter, it's an eruption. She suspects you're doing something, you're not doing it, it's an eruption. It's a complete disaster of a household, a dysfunction of a household. Weird thing was, like if you grow up in a middle-class household and everybody's at your level, that's one thing, that's fine. But if you grow up in a household where you don't have much means, but you live in a middle-class area, well, our next-door neighbor was the Nobel Prize winner.
Wow.
Yeah. So he didn't live there, but his parents would live there and he would come and visit, etc. And you see that, and you also see my dad's side, as I said, was quite wealthy. Some of them were in the tens of millions, and some of them now are worth in hundreds of millions. By the way,
yeah.
They're very humble people. And then you see yourself. You're wearing the same trouser for years, 5, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years. You get oversized stuff so that it could last you for a while.
Yeah, you grow with it.
You're being beaten up in front of everybody, so you have no honor. The honor that you have as a human being is does not exist, would not exist in that household. These things were happening. When I told this story to my therapist, I vomited. I got sick.
Wow.
I won't get sick now. If I'll say the story, maybe it'll help people. I hope it helps. I had no idea of what a wet dream is, because there's no one to tell me. Like you're just growing up in a household. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm imagining they didn't teach that in school.
No, there was nothing like that in school.
Yeah.
It's expected to, it's a traditional conservative country, right?
Yeah.
So I had a wet dream. My best friend, it was one of my closest friends, who I'm in touch with today. We're friends for 30 plus years. We reconnected maybe 2-3 years back. I saw him in my dream, and I think I kissed somebody, and I was sleeping with my mother at that time. I was 11, 12-ish, and I had no idea what happened to my PJ. There was a mark. What is this? There was no one to tell me that, dude, this is this. My older brother saw it, but he didn't think it was his place to say anything. He had his own issues. He was a very troubled kid. So that was in grade 6. I could never really excel in school. In grade 6, when I finished my final exam, I did okay. My results improved. I had a teacher who was really good. He left because he couldn't stand my stepmother, because she would always intervene and all that. My older brother, in the meantime, he was like a playboy in the town as he grew up. He was good looking, came from a well-known family. And girls really liked him. He was very, 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 still one of the funniest man you can ever meet. And one of the most generous. One thing I remember, and I tell him that, you taught me this, and I'll never forget it. a pedicab driver, a rickshaw puller, came in, and the guy didn't have anything on himself, and he was half naked. My brother gave him his own clothes, and just keep,
Wow.
but he wouldn't tell anybody. I saw it, and so I learned.
That's generous.
Very generous, very, very fair to his siblings. Very loving, very loving. So things like, things he did not really get, he gave to others. In the big book, we hear that you can't give something you haven't got. So what he cultivated was within himself by God's grace. And, so I'll never forget that. I think around 12, I started getting into girls, which is normal. My brother would keep porn in the house. Yeah, some porn magazines, but they were all just erotic stories. And they would have pictures, but not naked women. Like, I'd say, I don't think I saw any naked woman till I got married, till I was 25.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had no idea what a woman actually looked like. I mean, I knew about how her upper part looked like.
Yeah.
But the rest, I didn't have any idea.
Wow.
Yeah. But no one taught me, and you could say, oh, you could have Googled it, etc. Hey, call me stupid, whatever, man. I did. Okay. I never got caught with this kind of porn and masturbation or looking at this magazine and masturbation, but I would spend a lot of time in the bathroom masturbating. That was a relief, and I could never really excel in my studies. Now I know why, because and I could never have friends in the house. If I would play with my brother in my house, my stepmom would have a temper tantrum. Very isolating, and those curses I still carry. One of the things she would say every day is that, may curse of God be upon you. May the curse of God, and she would be very acted out. She was just very theatrical in her presentation of these filthy things. So your mom is a whore, your dad is this and this, and they left you, they're dead, you should die.
Jeez.
That was every day. Every day.
Yeah, so you ended up leaving there when you were 25?
So we moved to Dhaka because my mom's work moved her to Dhaka, the capital of the country. And then I got a job somewhere at a bank, and I wasn't doing very well, which is why I'm also in a money program, which helps me with this kind of stuff. And the managing director of that institution was one of my uncle's friend. And he was like a super CEO. I mean, he traveled to England, did things in England, and then did stuff in Asia. So his friend was looking for some daughter to get hitched, and I was available, and somehow we got matched. We met on a Sunday. Let's say we met this Sunday, and we got married on that week Friday.
Whoa. Yeah. So it was an arranged marriage?
It was, but I said yes.
Yeah.
It was my ticket out.
Wow.
It was my ticket out, and I wanted to get out. I mean, dude, because I knew that maybe I had a sense that I didn't know that she would hate or detest a woman coming into the family. That's something I'm really interested in, how people come into that kind of psychopathy, if I can call it, in a kind way, just trying to not label the person, but the disease itself. So when I got married, my ex-wife traveled back to Canada. She was from Canada. And that's how I came to this country. She would tell me every day, leave the girl. And in my mind, I was like, okay, she's trying to motivate me to be with the girl by saying something negative. Is that what's happening? Because she would always say negative things to me. Oh, you're good for nothing. This and this, right? Whatever. I'm coming to her, lecture. Looking back, this is something I'm studying in SEA, that the parent sort of hooks the child in a way that the child becomes dependent on the parent. And then the parent sort of has the full capacity to bash the child, or the child becomes the man or woman, or gender one chooses, or no gender. There was a fight that broke out. I felt, because my wife at that time was not feeling very contented staying with my stepmom in an arranged or a joint household scenario, and a major fight broke out. Oh, I on that day, that was the second time or third time I blacked out. I had blacked out once in anger. I
Wow.
went blacked out. So, which is why I need distance from that individual so that I don't get triggered. It's less so now, but still there. So, fight broke out. We moved into another household, and it created a lot of schism in the family for a while. It got fixed eventually. When we were leaving, my stepmom said to my ex-wife at that time that you're taking my son away. He's going to leave you one day.
Hmm.
And it came true in 6 months' time.
Wow.
And I would say this kind of things plays out if this is on the subconscious, right? It's like Tony Robbins, I think he said in one of his lectures, when he was young, he would scream positive things into his head. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. Right? That constant echoing of those filthy stuff, when they go into you, you make your parent, a human being, a demigod.
Wow.
And whatever they say, it subconsciously takes hold and it does something to one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to highlight this demigod situation, why it happened to that family, my mom's side, not my dad's side of the family. In my humble estimation, they weren't either good people few generations back, because we now know genetic memory. There's a thing called genetic memory.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exists. They weren't good people. They were fully refined human beings. I think that kind of culture, combined with the end of the Second World War, the riot, and all these things, never left that household. And I think as the eldest daughter, she was the second born in the family. There are 7 of them, now 6 because my mom passed away. I think she wanted to mother the younger ones, and she took in the brunt of that chaos. But like, give it to me so that the others are spared, because the others don't have this much chaos. They do, but don't have this much chaos. And certainly my mother didn't. At least I never saw it. Or my dad never saw it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have existed. Their marriage would have dissolved. So I came to Canada, marriage dissolves. My life is kind of, in a shift. I grew up with an idea that no girl will ever marry you. No girl will marry you ever. Nobody's going to stay with you. No girl's going to stay with you except for your mother. That was like drilled into your head. That's deconstructing a child. You're just taking everything out. You're ripping the brains out and everything. He can't think. You're pushing your own indoctrination. That's indoctrination. Cultish indoctrination. And I would say, I wrote something down here. Islam, the religion that I follow now, and I have a mentor who saved my life, hands down, multiple times. I never saw Islam work in my house. My stepmom would date, it's normal. She's in her 30s, she has needs, man. But on the same token, I can't bring any friend over. I can't play. Just normal things don't exist in that household. It's just so chaotic. So he was with 1 or 2 men. It didn't work, and it's normal. And then eventually with someone, it did work out for a bit, and now they're not together anymore, unfortunately. So I'm here. All these things, the ideas are echoing in my head. I'm in my isolation, in my loneliness, what have you. I'm working in a call center. Don't see much of a future for myself. And I'm like, I think I was at that time living in Brampton. I don't have any money. If I get married to a girl, my stepmom is gonna come in and intervene and do something between us. And I have a need. And I grew up kind of practicing, so I can't just sleep around. I've never had a girlfriend, ever. I was petrified. If they ever caught me with a girl, I was absolutely petrified, because she hated every single girl my brother liked. So there was a girl my brother liked, and they got caught. Sadly, you can be conservative, but things are not properly defined. Any culture can be very quick to punish the young. So my brother got, something happened to him, and my mother never accepted the girl, ever. Nothing wrong. were just young people. And to be honest, it would have done him good if she stayed with her, because after that, he's sleeping with whoever he could, because to fill that void, I think. Within that time, I could really see her anger, and that never left me. There was a scene that I still remember. The girl called. I couldn't keep the secret that who called. My mom found out. She knew the number of the girl's parents' place. She called her, called the girl like a house worker. You know, people come in and clean your house.
Yeah.
Cleaning lady. Like, your girl looks like a cleaning lady. And that's what she said to the girl's mother, to destroy the relationship.
Sheesh.
These things are playing in my head. I'm by myself. And okay, the only way I can deal with my own feelings or my needs is if I can watch something and masturbate.
Yeah.
And it's not like they didn't want to get me married. They did want to get me married, but I wouldn't, because I know if I get married today, she likes this girl as a bride. Tomorrow, day after,
tear it down.
Yeah. Both of us down. I still have that fear, I still carry that fear, which is why I'm in another program, ACA, and working on that, the dysfunctionality. So Islam, I never saw work in my household. Cultural, perhaps, for sure. So I'm doing this. My life is going nowhere. It was in Brampton by myself, staying in a basement, not having to see any future. Never had a girlfriend. So I don't know why would a girl like me? I have no money. My parents are dead. And if I bring a girl, this is complete chaos. Okay. Oh, there's one thing I should add. I was petrified to bring a girl into my life. My brother, because of his serial relationships, got the ire of somebody in the family. And they applied one of the punishment that's I'm not sure it's in the Bible or not. But definitely it's in our tradition. It's not applied. You shouldn't apply it unless you're like a legal authority to apply it. And even then, it's not applied now. But you're not the prophet. You're not right? You're not Jesus Christ. God bless him. So the punishment is like, if you're single and you're caught committing adultery, it's to hit them 80 times with a whip or something. People die. People die from that. I was petrified. I was not supposed to know this. Someone told me that this happened to your brother. And I was petrified.
Oh my God.
If I get caught with that, I am freaking dead. And growing up, there was this idea in me that if I die or live, people don't care. And my mom said, there were weird things. One of the person who took charge of being like a father figure was my mom's older brother. One night he comes into our house and says, "I'm like your father." Dude, I never saw you when I was born. Dude, like,
you're not my real dad.
Hello. Like, what the hell? Okay, I can respect you like a father. Okay, yeah, like an older uncle, that's fine. What he would do is, it's very interesting, maybe a bit Machiavellian. Like, he would ask me about my older brother, and he would ask my older brother about me. Like, so I couldn't say anything to my brother. It created mistrust between me and my older brother, right? At least for me. I'm not sure about him. When my dad was alive, this was the last thing. We left the house. My dad was by himself, and he was like, I can't deal with this. We went somewhere, and he came and asked me, like, what's the relationship between your parents? Like, how's it going? And I was told by my stepmother at that time that don't tell him anything. Tell him that it's going well. So I said, it's going well. When you come up from that, as I said, the trauma or that seeps into your subconscious, you get touched by it. It's human, right? So I grew up with like, I'm never going to get caught with any girl. Like, I get caught, I'm dead. They're going to rip me apart. Even here, I was like, no, man, like, I'm not getting caught with any girl. They hear, because they know a lot of people. They tried to get me married, but I said, no. In the meantime, my disease sort of takes hold around 2008, 2010 period. My niece is born. And that was a saving grace for me, because I was like, okay, I can't look at women the way I look at right now. My niece, love her. Well, I also met my teacher, and I have a teacher who saved my life. And I have no shame in saying that, or mentor, if I've already said that. And that's a miracle. So I told you my dad was a very well-read man. So he had a book by a 12th century spiritualist who talks about different vices of the human soul. The book that I got was about pride, how to get rid of pride. I had the best time. And he sort of lays down, This is what you do in the morning, in the evening, at night. Just follow this, you'll be fine. And I have the best time. So and all my life I was looking for somebody who would understand me as a human being, see me as a human being. And I found someone who was sort of came out that kind of understanding. And I said it's a miracle because at work, suddenly I met an individual who sort of followed my mentor's teachings. I consider it a miracle because I've looked online for him and I couldn't get a hold of him. And suddenly this individual is standing in front of me who can take me to my mentor. And I've been with him ever since. In 2010, I came into the program. I went to SAA meeting somewhere in Toronto, and it didn't make any sense. It's like, what are these people doing? Like, what is this first? I don't know. I don't know what your first meeting was like. You're sitting around, standing up. What is this? And I just couldn't make any sense. So I left to my own detriment. Within 2 years, I lost my job, which I had for 5 years. My life wasn't moving. I wasn't following my mentor's advice, what he had told me. I would follow it, some here and there. I was isolating, so that was a problem. I get kicked out of my house because I wasn't paying rent. I was just paying for porn. Went into video chat at that time, which is not a big problem for me right now. Sometimes I do indulge. It's one of my middle circle, I would say. I get kicked out. I have no place to stay. My aunt takes me in. I stay at that house by almost 5 or 6 years, rent-free. So they were generous enough to let me stay there. So that was in 2013. 2013 to 2019, my depression, my hopelessness was so much. I only worked maybe 3 years if I had the time, and the rest 3 years I didn't even work. So I had hardly any money. In 2017, I think, my disease went haywire. My life was going anywhere, and that's when I went into the subway thing. But it lasted for about 4 or 5 months. I was trying to get out. And I told my teacher and a mentor, and he's like, you're going to become a person who is completely useless. And that's what exactly happened, right? Nobody could trust you. You can't accomplish anything. You can't, if they say, move that chair from here to there, I couldn't even do that. There's a term for that right now. It's called frontal lobe syndrome or dysexecutive syndrome. So when that happens, it can happen to anybody. And one of the examples that my mentor gave was of a guy who studied at Yale in architecture. Your creativity is gone. Chatter. You can't even complete a task. You can't think logically. That's the main problem. You can't think logically. Yeah. So you can't accomplish any task. You cannot prioritize your tasks.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
There you go. Okay. My older maternal uncle called me one day. Hey, how are you doing? I said, I'm in a really bad shape. I'm not doing very well. And I was crying on the phone. I have depression, etc., etc. He told my stepmom, of all the people, she called me and she's like, I heard you have depression. You know who have depression? Losers. Losers have depression.
Oh, jeez.
Like, okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks. This is karma. Within a few months, she got depression and she had to be on medication. She got off medication. I don't know why, but whatever. I think she has depression. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So in early 2018, my stepmom gives me a ticket to travel back to Bangladesh for 3 weeks. And they were trying to get me married. And I was like, no, I can't get married. If this problem in me, I don't want to bring a girl in and create a problem and expand it. Met someone, but obviously didn't proceed. That helped a lot. Because as I'm in recovery, I can see that if you stay out of a task for 1 day, 1 week, 3 weeks, 40 days, 3 months, year, 2 year, 3 year, these are markers in the brain. The brain sort of recovers at certain things. The scientists can better talk about it. And those 3 weeks, because I didn't act on my inner circle, I'm like, oh, I think I can go without it. I come back the first day, I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I was like, no, I can't. And, I'll tell you, the rush of not getting caught. I can empathize with bank robbers. I can empathize with kleptomaniacs. That rush, brother, is something else. When no one can see you, when you're running, you're ducking, you're hiding. There are cameras there. They can't see you. Or you think you can, they can't see you.
Yeah.
You're not getting caught. right? Something happened. One day I'm in the subway. A girl comes in and she calls the driver of the subway, conductor, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
The train is stopped. And she's like, this guy, not me, some other guy exposed himself to her. That it happened only once. And when I was in my inner, so God is sort of telling me, this is where you're going.
You're on that path.
You're on that path. You're on that path. Yeah. So after my first relapse, when I came back from Bangladesh, I went to CAMH. I told her, hey, this is my problem. And the psychiatrist, who was a woman, she was relieved to get caught. So I didn't act out for a few months. Then I did once, and I did one more. I think July or August of 2018 was the last time I acted out on the subway. The watching of the illegal stuff online, it happened because I was stupid and I was looking for porn on the dark web, and they came up.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this for a few seconds, and I left, and that's it. When I understood what the hell, I just left. That's it. I always had this fear, even though I was watching legal things like YouTube and stuff, I had this fear that the cops are going to break through my door. I don't know why. It was always there. Even though I was doing anything illegal, there was always that fear. That I think that fear sort of plays into the progression of the disease and destroys it. So at that time, I joined SLAA. I was desperate to find a sponsor, and I had gone through 4 or 5 sponsors at that time, I think, but couldn't find anybody. Then I found a sponsor and started working the program. So 2019, I didn't have a job at that time. I was still watching a lot of porn. And then suddenly by the grace of God, I was able to stop. I don't know when I stopped. That was a stretch of 8 months. I didn't watch any porn at all. I would masturbate. And today I can say I had a lot of shame with masturbation. Right now, my shame is much less, like 50%, because my mentor told me there's nothing shame in that, And shame is not a bad thing. We wear clothes because we have shame, right? All right. But there's a thing called toxic shame. Toxic shame cannot help anybody overdoing something. So I was able to perform at my job, but there would be bouts of depression where I think it's called vegetative depression, where I couldn't move. I couldn't leave my bed and open the door, even though it's like 5 steps to open the door. I still suffer from that, but it's getting better. So that was 2019. And then in early 2020, I was abstinent from alcohol. I think I'm still a dry drunk. Went to a work meeting in work stuff, vacation, whatever, somewhere in the United States. And I got drunk big time, and the craving came back. So since then I go to AA whenever I can. So now I'm quite regular at AA in recent times. Because I'm in multiple programs, by the grace of God, and I listen to my mentor as much as possible. Life has struggles. In recent times, I had struggled with suicide. When I met you guys in Zoom, I was dealing with that.
Yeah.
And the way I try to understand it, I've heard it is, God tries you with trials so that you can be better. And some trials or tests to the point that you can tolerate it. And if you can do the right thing, it'll make you better or it'll destroy you. So you have 2 choices.
Yeah.
Right. So because of having friends like you and others in the program, it helps to stay in touch and be grounded. Not always. I'm definitely not all the time. Or stay grounded and make an attempt to be grounded. Life has improved beyond imagination. If I knew my life would be okay when I was young and when I was in the depths of my addiction, 2008, 2009, I wouldn't have done this. I just had no hope.
Yeah.
And, I'll add this because Chomsky talks about this. Somewhere in the internet, he talks about this. In his time, in the 1920s and 30s, when the big depression happened, right? 29. They were poor. His parents were immigrants, I think Polish immigrants. Or Russian or Ukrainian, I forget. And they didn't have much money, but they had hope. So right now, people don't have hope. That's a big problem in the younger generation.
Yeah.
And the lack of it can and I suffered from it recently. Something happened at work, and I expressed my feelings to somebody, and they said no. And it sort of took me into a very dark place, but I'm okay now. I'm doing much better now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you're doing better. I was just
Yeah.
reminiscing on when you first came into the Zoom rooms. It was, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I can remember being at the Serenity on the Sound retreat, and you joined there, and it's like, hey, that's the guy from my noon room, and just
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
just like this just seeing you pop up on various Zoom meetings that we were attending, and that's how our friendship really started. I'm so
I would
grateful
go
for
to.
that.
No, thanks to you guys. Saved my life. And thankfully, I had some good friends in program and outside of the program who gave me good
Hmm.
advice. And one of the first suggestions when my mentor learned that I have this problem, he talked about the 12 steps. He said, AA, 12 steps, you do this, you'll be okay. And, even though my mentor is Muslim and I go to this multiple 12-step program, and he's okay with it, absolutely,
Hmm.
because they don't conflict. This is my problem. I thought they conflict with my religion. They don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if there's anybody out there thinking that Islam is contradictory to 12 steps, it is absolutely not.
Hmm.
It embraces it. And I will just add one more anecdote before I go. We finish perhaps. There was a man in my prophet's time, hope to peace be upon him, who was an alcoholic. And how it was done at that time is you do something, and he was advised that don't do it. But he was an alcoholic, he couldn't help himself.
Hmm.
So he got drunk and he was beaten up. And third time he came, he's still an alcoholic. And they wanted to really, and the prophet said, don't do this. He loves God and his prophet. In the end, if you can find hope, that is the last grace. That can dissolve any addiction.
Hmm.
The addiction, tries like a black claw, fist, whatever, tries to destroy a small kernel of hope, but it can never destroy it. Not by
Yeah.
grace. Yeah.
That is a beautiful, beautiful way to end this episode. It's such an amazing story that you've had, Cyrus, and thank you so much for sharing that here on the podcast.
No, I hope it helps somebody out there. Yeah, and thank you for taking the step. Whoever does good gets the share of that, and you with your work, if I can get a share of the good,
Oh,
that has a karmic effect.
yeah. Yeah.
I hope, all the destructions that I've brought into myself and somewhat to others.
Yeah.
This is an amend. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I thank you so much for
Thank you.
being a guest.
Absolutely. My pleasure, my friend. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
all right, and I will see you soon.
Absolutely. Take
All
care.
right. All right. Bye-bye. Many thanks to Cyrus for sharing his story here on the podcast, and I was so grateful to have this time to reconnect with him. Since Cyrus did bring up suicide in this episode, I did want to mention that if you are in suicidal crisis or emotional distress, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 800-273-8255, or the website suicidepreventionlifeline.org. And yeah, I did realize that this was a long conversation, so I will be keeping the ending of this episode short, but I did want to share some music. And yeah, I do have bands and artists in my spiritual playlist that are Muslim. But for this episode, I wish to highlight Pakistani singer Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. And this is from a website called nusratonline.com. It gives a great background on him and his impact on music. And it says, Pakistan's most revered Qawwal singer, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, made the whole world resonate with the lyrical heights of Qawwali, a secular form of Sufi song that calls to divine ecstasy. His nearly superhuman vocal abilities, extraordinary improvisational skills, troubling intensity and softness of his voice all helped him bring the mystical music of Sufis to the international stage, becoming one of the most celebrated superstars of world music. He brought Qawwali music from mosques and shrines of Sufi saints to the common man, winning the applause of the most diverse audiences ever while keeping faithful to his message. And this is a quote, "When I am singing, the distance between God and me becomes lesser," he said. "This music brings people together." And continuing here, Nusrat reached the status of the greatest voice in the Indian subcontinent. His voice, covering 5 octaves, became recognizable in Bombay, northern Afghanistan, remote villages of Bangladesh. His concerts, mysteries lasting for many hours, were filled with an excited audience who paid no attention to the religious differences of other listeners, which even now is an exception among Muslims from Pakistan and Hindus from India. Nusrat's music was not limited to India and Pakistan. It also won the recognition of the Western world and built a bridge between Eastern and Western civilizations. Yeah, and so with so many songs to choose from, I narrowed it down to a song called Must Must. मेरा वीर दे है दम दम अली अली मेरा वीर दे है दम दम अली अली सखी लाल कलंदर मस्त मस्त सखी लाल कलंदर मस्त मस्त झूले लाल कलंदर मस्त मस्त दम मस्त कलंदर मस्त मस्त दम मस्त कलंदर मस्त दम मस्त Absolutely amazing. And I originally found Nusrat's music through his work with Peter Gabriel, and Trent Reznor also used his music for the Natural Born Killers soundtrack. So with that, I will close out this episode. And if you wish to leave feedback for the podcast or share any music with the podcast community, please leave us an email at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. And if you wanted to get a hold of me personally to be a guest on the pod, or if you have any questions about SAA, please reach me at jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and as always, keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.